Welcome everybody. My name is Gene Guidry, and I am ULI Louisiana. Um, what am I? I'm the events, not the programs chair. And forgot for a minute. I've been active in ULI Louisiana for a very long time, and I'm very excited to be a part of um, what we're calling ULI Louisiana's Content Hour series. And today is going to be especially a good one as we're going to discuss the state of the restaurant industry with Nina Compton from Compare Le Pen and Bywater American Bistro. We're so happy to have her here. And I just wanted to give everyone a little brief intro into ULI. ULI stands for the Urban Land Institute. It's a national and international nonprofit, and we are pushing for sustainable land use. And we have a local chapter, ULI Louisiana, which covers all of Louisiana, but most of our members are in New Orleans and Baton Rouge. We have a very active industry. It's a multidisciplinary. We have developers, architects, lawyers, brokers, you name it. Yeah, and we have some, let's see what the next slide is. We have some upcoming events. We're going to be reading Evicted. It's our second book club book, and we're going to be reading this one in conjunction with ULI St. Louis. Very excited about this one. We spent 4 or 5 sessions reading The Color of Law earlier, and really got a lot from it. And I think that this is going to be an equally good experience. In late January, we also have our annual Emerging Trends event. It's going to be digital, and it's a really good event to find out what's happening in all the industries and across the country and in New Orleans as well. And of course, we are a nonprofit, and we'd like to thank all of our sponsors as they are listed here. So I am really excited to introduce Nina Compton, who is the owner and chef and operator of Compare Le Pen in New Orleans, old number 77 hotel on Tchoupitoulas and Poydras. She also opened up Bywater American Bistro in the Bywater. And I'm an architect and a designer, and I love going into buildings that have that I know the owner put special thought into and designed it, and it's attractive and inviting. And restaurants are the same thing for me, and Nina puts in a lot of special design and flair into her restaurants, and they really keep people coming back. And I think that's what makes her so successful. And I'm excited to hear her point of view on where she stands, what's the restaurant industry look like right now, and kind of what does she see as the future as we're getting into a kind of a post-pandemic scenario. And I'm going to let her speak for a little bit, and then we're going to do a Q&A afterwards. You can write your questions in the chat box, or it's probably we have a small enough group here that you could probably ask Nina questions while she's going, if she doesn't mind. Otherwise, we'll be taking the questions at the end. So anyway, it's my pleasure to introduce Nina Compton.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nina Compton. I am chef owner, as Jean said, of Bywater American Bistro here in New Orleans and Compare Le Pen. So when you talk about the state of the industry, it's been an interesting chapter from March 15th. It's been, watching the pandemic come across from Europe into the US. I think that a lot of us in the industry were a little bit doubtful that it was going to be this much of an impact. And then when you started watching all the states shut down, it was New York, it was Chicago, then eventually Louisiana. So that was something we weren't prepared for. So we shut down March 15th, by What American Beach for 2 months. And Compella Pen just recently opened in November. So it's been an interesting journey of watching the trends in terms of volume, for businesses running a restaurant, because, as you know, New Orleans, we are dependent on tourism. So if we don't have the foot traffic, it's kind of been hard to navigate that. Also, Compella Pen is downtown. So when you have offices that are not in use, a lot of people working from home, there is no foot traffic. So that has been an interesting way for us to navigate, do we reopen, do we not reopen? And also because it's been so inconsistent with the cases where we have, nationally a good grasp on that. And then now we start to see it trend up, and you start to see a lot of states shut back down. So that has been a very interesting journey for us so far, but it's also made us very creative in the sense of, how do we keep the business model going? Because a lot of restaurants now, the old business model doesn't work for this pandemic. So you talk about smaller menus, smaller staff, doing things like meal kits, doing to-go menus. I never thought that I would be on DoorDash, and now we are. So there's a lot of pivoting that happens constantly for us to get through this pandemic, because it's, like I said, the old model doesn't work. So things like cooking classes, a lot of virtual stuff, because people are not traveling to New Orleans, but they still want to come to your restaurant and, have a meal, but do that through the virtual platforms. So I think that has been really helpful for us. And people want to support, whether it's buying a t-shirt, whether it's buying a to-go meal. So those things have kept us going. And New Orleans is a very resilient city. The beauty of the city is having people in the community support us. So that has been really helpful, helping get through, because I'm talking to people like Donna Link or Mike Galater. How are you doing? Checking in people like T. Martin, seeing how she's doing and what everybody's doing, because everybody's just trying to make everybody survive and get to the other side. Because I think when we do get to the other side, it's going to be such a beautiful journey that we can actually say we finally got through this. And I think once we get through the pandemic, I think people are just really going to embrace restaurants so much more, because it's going to be a big celebration. So that's pretty much my life on the other side of the restaurant industry.
Nina, could you talk about what it's like having a restaurant in a hotel right now? I know that you recently reopened Compare Le Pen, I think for the first time since you closed.
Yes.
Could you tell us what the dynamic is like? I know they don't have a high occupancy right now.
So the occupancy has been trending about 30%, which is quite low for hotels. What we're seeing as a trend is people are booking last minute. People are not booking long term, a month or 2 months in advance. It's normally within 48 hours. So that has been something that we're noticing. And that's why when we were waiting to reopen Compella Pen, we wanted to make sure that the occupancy was at least consistent in some sense. But I think when it comes down to it, having the locals support us has been very helpful. But again, you have to become very creative, where we start doing like different theme nights, whether it's a fish fry or a pasta night, just to get people engaged, because there are so many restaurants here. But you have to be top of mind all the time, and that's where you have to become creative. Because yes, our menu I think is really good, but how many times have people had the corn croquettes? You gotta bring something new nowadays to get people to come out of their houses.
Based on what you've experienced in having to reset some of the norms in order, in your current workflow and everything, do you see shifts that you have done now in both of your restaurants that you think will spill over into, a post-pandemic world? I mean, I know I talked to a lot of people and they're wearing masks and they like it, and they're like, I don't know,
Right.
maybe after the pandemic, I'll keep wearing a mask. And they don't really bother me. So I'm wondering if the table spacing is going to go back to what it was prior, or do people feel like they enjoy the elbow room or whatever?
I think a lot of things that had come into place during this pandemic it will definitely it might just stick when you talk about things like outdoor seating. I think that is going to be something we never entertained that before, but we had so many people calling saying, do you have outdoor tables? And my husband's like, no, we don't. I'm like, we're losing so much business, we don't have outdoor tables. So we eventually had to get that. So I think having those options now is definitely a thing that's going to stay. I think also having the plexiglass probably at the bars, I think might stay because, just for health reasons, even though we have a vaccine, it's a little more sanitary. I think those things will definitely work. I think when people definitely feel under the weather, I think the masks people will start wearing more, and it'll be, I think, more adopted to our culture, which I think is going to be very helpful in terms of just spreading the everyday flu or cold.
Hey, Matt, did that answer your question?
That was exactly, we phrased it in a different way, but that.
I know I asked it and then I looked in the chat. I'm like, oh, Matt's asked it also. Nina, where have all the bartenders gone? And are they going to come back? The niche bartending scene that you have at both of your restaurants take a really small niche profession. Where are they? Like, what's happening to them?
I think, once the pandemic hit, and I think a lot of us thought that this would be, a couple of months, 2-3 months. And now it's 9 months. So I think a lot of people have changed professions. I think a lot of people have viewed the industry a little bit differently. It's not quite enticing as it used to be because it's so unstable right now, where people saying, do I really want to be a chef, or do I really want to be, a bartender right now? Because you're seeing so many restaurants open and close, and, they're doing full service to takeout to, completely shut. So it's the inconsistency in a business that is really not enticing people to pursue this career further.
Is New Orleans losing? This is a question from, is it D. Cray?
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead and ask your question.
David.
Well, oh, it's David.
Yes, it's David. I was just
Hey,
curious.
David.
Hi. I was just curious to see. I've heard of people moving to Florida because everything's open over there, or most things are open over there. And also, I just heard a couple of people that were moving to parts of Texas where they feel like there's some opportunity with the economy's doing well, and there's also some growth with, or things are open over there as well. Houston, Austin, some of those areas. So I didn't know if New Orleans was losing any staff. Because when I go downtown, I just see fewer people on the street, and I'm wondering if maybe have they moved away or not.
I think that's possible. I think a lot of people that don't have ties here, they're just gonna find the opportunity because there aren't many people that are hiring right now. There are a lot of people that are, I think when you're reopening a restaurant, you're hoping that you're gonna be busy, and then you realize, okay, I don't need all of these people. And then some people are cutting, some people cannot guarantee, 40 hours a week. Some people are getting 2 or 3 days a week. So I think the other states, it might seem more promising because they're wide open. You look at Florida, he said he's not going to shut down the state. He's going to keep it wide open. Whereas our mayor is being a little more conservative and protective of I think, the long term for the states. And that's a very tough job to say, do I sacrifice people's lives or do I sacrifice the economy? So I think long term, I think we're in a different different shell here.
Antique?
Then I had to find my mute button. I'm wondering, besides, like, you touched on the tables outside and how that's been a change for you and your restaurants. I'm wondering, what about inside, the parts that people don't see? Have you had to make any significant adjustments to your kitchen in particular?
My kitchen pretty much stayed the same. By What American Bistro, for example, it has always been a small team. So that has worked out very well. Whereas Compare La Pen, we had to reconfigure the menu a little bit to make sure that there weren't too many people in the kitchen. Because again, some restaurants, it is very labor intensive, and we had to refocus that just to make sure that it was safe for everybody to be working in that space.
I was going to ask, and then David, we're going to get to your questions next. What happened whenever you weren't operating to your lease or your leases, and what's happening to some of these other restaurants who haven't been open for a while? I mean, I know that there was some subsidies from the government that went out that took care of a couple of months at least. How are they floating that? What are landlords doing if you don't own it or mortgages?
Some people, I haven't heard of anybody getting full rent abatement. I think most landlords are a little bit understanding. And it all depends on your deal. Some people have a percentage rent based on sales. Some people just have just a flat rate. So it all depends on that. Some people, it depends also on the landlord too. If they're still paying the full mortgage, they still have to pay the bank back. So there's a lot of that as well, that it all depends on that. It's a personal thing where, if the landlord said, I've paid this building off, but I can give you 50% off rent, I can do that. So there is that as well. But I think a lot of people, it costs less to stay closed for some people, just because by the time you turn the lights on, the gas, the food, the wine, then the labor, then you got to pay insurance, you got to pay taxes, sales tax, everything. So those things add up very quickly. Whereas if you're just closed and you can pay the bare minimum, it actually might be more profitable to just stay closed until you can have that volume to pay off everything.
Okay, David, you're up. I don't know what a ghost kitchen is, so I'll let you go ahead and ask your question.
Yes. When do you see ghost kitchens growing? But a ghost kitchen is part of this concept with the delivery model, where instead of having a full kitchen with tables and set up for patrons to come into the restaurant, they set up a kitchen off site and they deliver from that. So you can develop a much more efficient flow of incoming and outgoing food, or drivers coming in to pick up and so on, rather than having to put everything at the end of your bar and having drivers walk in and out while people are trying to eat. So I was curious to see if you see that kind of a ghost kitchen model, and would you consider ever having a ghost kitchen model where would you set up a ghost kitchen and just either supplement your in on-site business, or maybe even go to something where it would just be full delivery with a certain type of concept?
Yeah, I think the ghost kitchens are definitely on the up. I think a lot of people are just trying to minimize cost. And labor is very expensive. So I think a lot of people are trying to, go in that outlet, but you also see a lot of people doing stuff with like Will Central Kitchen. When Compare La Pen closed, we were doing things at the Red Beans Parade, feeding frontline workers. So I think a lot of people are just finding creative ways to keep that going. Some chefs are they're trying to get into the retail aspect, because the state of the industry right now, it's a lot of people are jaded. They're like, I don't want to go any further with this. I just want to get out of it. Because again, a lot of people they lose hope. They seem very doubtful of coming out of this. And it is, you do find yourself some days where you're like, what's the point? Why am I carrying on with this? So a lot of people are, throwing in the towel as you go on, because they're like, what's the point? But that's why you kind of have to surround yourself with the people that want to push through and want to make it. And I just can't imagine New Orleans without restaurants and bars, and it's you just have to keep that positive attitude, like we got to make it.
Matt?
Sure. I am not in the restaurant business, so I won't claim to sort of understand completely the ways that it didn't work, but I heard a lot of news reports and things on social media and things that the payment protection plan really didn't work very well for
Right.
service businesses. And so I'm curious if you're aware of whether there's any reason for optimism that if there is some new small business assistance in the next stimulus round, is it likely to be any better for your type of businesses?
So the first round of PPP was kind of a hodgepodge. I think it was thrown together by the government, because again, nobody thought this was going to be a long-term thing. I personally thought we would be, 30 days and we would snap right back. But we haven't. So I think the first round of PPP was thrown together in a rush. I think the rules were a little bit gray from the beginning, where people were told you got to spend it in 8 weeks or 10 weeks. So I had a lot of friends who got the first round, and they spent everything because they were trying to get forgiveness. So I have been working with the IRC to try and get the Restaurants Act passed by Congress, which they haven't. The second round of stimulus does not include restaurants in the package. So I think the next thing that they're trying to do is another round of PPP. But it's kind of frightening because you don't really have the clarity of what the forgiveness is. And quite frankly, who wants to take a loan out in this time? So it's frustrating to watch other industries get the bailout, and then we're just like, everything you read in the news is don't go to restaurants, don't go to bars, and we're getting blamed for spreading this virus when actually we're not. It's a lot of people don't see that all my staff, we take temperature checks, we sanitize tables, we don't overcrowd our rooms, we socially distance everything. And people don't understand, actually, when you go into your friend's house, you have more chance of getting COVID there than actually going to a restaurant. And so when people talk about going to essential business, like you go to Lowe's, you go to grocery stores, they're packed. You go to Walmart, it's packed. So when people talk about going to a restaurant and the restaurant is not safe, we have constantly been given the bad name from the beginning of this pandemic. Don't go to restaurants, don't go to restaurants. And it's really killing a lot of businesses, because you have 11 million people that are employed by this industry. And I would say maybe less than a third are actually brought back nationally, which is terrifying.
Thank you. I know it's not an upbeat assessment, but I hope the next round is an improvement.
So do I.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Antique.
Yeah, well, just one thought was really interesting. I had not myself put the thoughts together of, well, I don't tend to go to Lowe's, et cetera. On the other hand, it's kind of like restaurants are a regulated business right now, whereas everyone else is a bit more of a free-for-all.
Right.
And so it's an interesting valid point. I was curious if you were to be looking for a new, you lost your lease or something at Compare Le Pen, you were looking for a new location, not just for like during pandemic time, but has this year changed what you would look for in a location? And if so, what would you look for now? And if not, that'd be interesting to hear too.
I think right now, what would work for most restaurants right now, if you're going to re-sign a lease, is look for something in the residential areas. I think that when you look at the big cities, I know friends in New York that had expensive leases, and there's nobody in Manhattan right now. So you're paying $30,000 for rent, and there's nobody coming downtown. Everybody's working from home. So I think that you have the residential areas or those neighborhoods. I think those are actually the golden ticket right now, because people are working from home and people are staying at home. And I think that that's probably going to stay for quite some time, that people are going to be working from home. I think that, nobody's going to be rushing back to office buildings, because first of all, if you have a business and if you can have people work from home instead of paying, a lease for an office space, I think that's definitely a smart move, is just not to have the office space. So
you
I think that
is a permanent change in terms of like the restaurant locations as well, or?
I think that's definitely going to affect restaurant locations, because if people are not going to have offices downtown, then, then what's the point? If you're going to have a restaurant in a neighborhood area or close to a neighborhood, that would make more sense.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and slightly terrifying to think about some of our, urban cores losing some of their, nightlife with restaurants and lunches
Right.
and everything. But I definitely see your point. Rebecca wants to know if you've been able to access non-government funding.
In the beginning, there were a lot of grants available for restaurants, not large grants, but I know that there was some available in New Orleans, and I think that there are some for the smaller businesses. You have to do a certain threshold of sales to qualify for those. Some of those we didn't qualify, some of them we did. But again, it's those things are great. The grants are great, but it's not enough for the long term. If you're talking about being shut down for 30 days, that's fine. But if you're going through 9 months to 10 months of this inconsistency, you need more than just a grant. You need government assistance.
All right, we have the next question is the big buzzword in the retail restaurant business pre-pandemic was experiential. What trend do you see replacing that in the next 1 to 2 years?
I think what's going to definitely be trending are the virtual classes. A lot of people are doing those because conventions are really not happening. So a lot of people are doing those virtual cooking classes for their guests. I did one with American Express where I sent recipes and they got a package and they cooked along. So those things are kind of replacing that, dining experience, but cooking along with the chef and having the meal after. A lot of people are doing the meal kits to go. I think that's definitely going to stay. Having that, restaurant experience at home. I think a lot of people are doing, you see a lot of restaurants doing Gold Belly. Shipping across the country is definitely going to stay for a while, because people just want to have that access. Because again, the travel is really hindering, I think, all business across. Maybe not Amazon, but because they're on the up. But I think the travel has definitely, hindered a lot of people's businesses. That's not traveling. You talk about music, you talk about food, you talk about hotels, all those things are affected by travel.
David, you want to go ahead and ask Nina some of your questions?
Sure. The second one was more of a comment when she was talking about the regional. I was just mentioning, I'll start with the second first. We went out last Saturday night. Covington's been open. They have social distancing, mask wearing, and so on, but the restaurants have been open, and we had to wait 45 minutes for a table. So it's been busy on the North Shore and everything. And so
Right.
talking about some of the regional areas, and I noticed that Desi Vega opened a steakhouse in Covington, where he was only on the South Shore before, and he just opened up about 3 weeks ago in Covington. So I see some of that movement. It's almost like post-Katrina, where you had Medina's and Galatoire's and stuff open up in Baton Rouge and other places. So we've seen
Right.
some shift in that. I guess one of the question I had was, if you look at, I was here for the oil bust too. And when you look at Pelican Club, Maximo's, and some of those that were around, they opened up when real estate got cheap after the oil bust in the late 80s. And that kind of set the trend for the next bistro and some of those things that came about that we didn't have before that really still opened up. Do you see the economics changing in real estate to where might it be more affordable and might we get some more innovation, maybe not new restaurants, but maybe something where you can, a new layout concept or something like that, where you can spread out more and maybe break up the crowds and have the flow of patrons different that might accommodate the new environment from an infectious disease standpoint, but also might lend itself to something on the architectural element where it would be a new design or new layout for restaurants in general?
Yeah, I think definitely the what's trending now is, like I said, the outdoor spaces and having, wider spaces. Because even though we go back to normal, people are still going to have it in their head that, I don't feel safe, in this space because it's, I'm too close to this person. So I think that definitely the price of real estate is definitely one. I think a lot of people are changing concepts where it's not so fancy. I think people are looking for approachable experiences. The way I look at things now is that, if you go out to a restaurant and you get the bill and it's, $250 for two people, it's like, that was a great experience, but you probably won't do that every month. It probably might be every 6 months. So I think people are kind of looking for that, approachable, affordable, multiple experiences more frequently. I think is definitely the key word here, and that comes down to the real estate. I think real estate is definitely a big one, because when you're doing a restaurant, the lease is the most expensive thing. The real estate is the most expensive thing. So if you can't afford to pay that, you're going to definitely go on the outskirts and then have that approach for a restaurant in that space.
Nina, do you feel more of a pull to be a thought leader in your industry than you were pre-pandemic?
I think so. I think I've definitely become more vocal because I'm not going to take this sitting down. This is all I know. All I know is how to cook. So for me to just sit here and just take all these lashes, I'm not going to do it. I need to vocalize these things because it is, first of all, my livelihood, and this is my business. This is my name. So it is a very scary moment where people say, "Hey, how is Compare Le Pen doing? Are you guys busy?" It's my name on the door, and I want to give not only myself a voice, but the other people in my community a voice that can't speak up or don't want to speak up, or don't have the time to speak up or don't even know how to speak up. So for me to say, I'm going to fight for this and I'm going to keep on doing this and I'm going to try and make this work, because it is, the sense of community here in New Orleans is like no other. So if I can be vocal about these things, not just in New Orleans, but also nationally, just to get a little bit of attention to like, hey, we need some help here. And, these are the issues that we're having. I'm definitely going to do it.
Yeah, it does feel that way from my perspective, that I've seen you advocating for your industry more than I remember you doing in the pre-pandemic. I think it means a lot to a lot of people. Are there any other questions from the audience?
Nina, are there in relation to sort of what you've been talking about in terms of some of the trends about bigger spaces, people being innovative and sort of relating to COVID, are there other restaurants in town in addition to your own that you think have done a good job with that are sort of good representations of some of these trends that might outlive COVID?
I think, I look up to Donald Link. I have so much respect for him because of his history, the way he runs his business. I think he's one of the smartest people I know. So when you talk about, safety and, the team work that he does, and just the way he's probably the most consistent person, I would say, in the city, in terms of his brand. So when we talk about that, I think that he is definitely somebody I look up to. I mean, I talk to so many people, you know, on a weekly or monthly basis. I talk to T. Martin, I talk to Mike Gallat, I talk to some people not even in the industry, just to see how they're doing and what they're doing, because everybody has different ideas of how to get through this pandemic. And I think that having that mentorship from my peers has been really helpful.
Well, Nina, I really appreciate your time speaking with us tonight. I really appreciate it. I know you're about to, the dinner crowd is probably almost there. Or
Yeah.
starting to come. I have one more question to send us
Yes.
off, and what's the silver lining like coming out of all of this? And what are you looking forward to in the future?
I think the silver lining is that every day I get to do what I love, which is to cook and make people happy through food. I think the silver lining is that I'm trying to keep this industry afloat, and also just to get to the other side and to look back and be like, man, we survived the pandemic, we survived 2020, we went through so much, and like, you know, I want to be part of that celebration when we get through all of this. That's my silver lining.
Wonderful. Well, Hunter and I want to come and eat in the yurt, so that's gonna happen
Yes.
soon.
The yurts are busy. The yurts are very busy.
I was trying to figure out where they are.
They're in the warehouse across the street,
Across
from
the
Bywood.
street.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's you still feel like you're outside, but also like you're inside.
That must have been interesting to negotiate with the owner of the. I mean, who owns that warehouse?
Sean Cummings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Yeah,
So
I look forward to having dinner there.
it's fun, and I hope that people on this panel can come visit soon.
Thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you so
You
much.
too.
Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye bye.